On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, no Jakob Poeltl, no chance for the Raptors against the bloody, terrifying OKC Thunder, but Jonathan Mogbo sure was awesome.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, December the 6th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've covered the Toronto Raptors now 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work on the socials, on Blue Sky, Instagram, Discord. Link in the description of the podcast to join the Discord. We'd love to see you there. They become part of our listener family over on the Discord server. It's lovely. It's fun. It's free, as is the Locked On Raptors daily newsletter, which you can access by going to the QR code on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, or by going to the link in the description of the podcast, clicking through, dropping your email in, and every single day of the week, you will get a little email from yours truly with some words about your Toronto Raptors. Original writing 5 times a week. You get Katie Heindl on the national scope of the league 4 times a week, Michael Shearer from Basketball Poetry once a week, and then Josh Lloyd fantasy tips to help you win your league in there as well. It's totally worth the investment of $0 and about 8 seconds of your time to sign up. Thanks in advance for doing that. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we'll get started here breaking down a bit of an ugly one for your Toronto Raptors, a 37-point beatdown at the hands of the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are, if you've not heard, quite freaking good. And so we'll get into the good, the bad, and the We're going to, of course, with it being Friday and all, at least spend one segment putting up the blinders to all that is bad and talking about Jonathan Mogbo, who is awesome. And we'll get into that later on. But we should just start with kind of the elephant in the room. The second we heard before this game that Jakob Poeltl was going to be out with an illness, you kind of knew how this one was going to go. It just is not all that feasible for this Raptors team to compete with a team as good as the OKC Thunder without Jakob Poeltl, who is the straw that stirs so many of the Raptors' drinks at once, offensively, defensively, all the little stuff in between. It's tough to make life work without Jakob Poeltl, and we saw his absence kind of play out in all kinds of different facets throughout this game. And then, of course, the Thunder being the Thunder, they brought their own imprint to it as well and just made it really, really tricky for the Raptors to find any kind of traction in this game. I think against some other teams, the Raptors are more equipped without Jakob Poeltl than they were last year to get results, to play competitively. This is not the sort of Jordan Nwora, Malik Williams Raptors where they had no shot down the stretch. This is a team that, there's some flexibility. You can play Jonathan Mogbo at the 5. We'll get into Mogbo, baby. Love him. He's so cool. Scotty Barnes, you can play at the 5 and have more functional lineups that are sort of elongated around him without Jakob Poeltl. They can get by in a way they couldn't last year where they went 4-28 without Poeltl. But against the best team in the Western Conference and probably the best team in the NBA, the team that I might put my money on to win the title right now, not having Jakob Poeltl for all the different things he does, the screening, the interior finishing, the powering, the league best offensive rebounding percentage that the Raptors sport. It's really tricky to go and survive against this Thunder team, especially because the Thunder's defense is kind of designed in a lab to make life hell for the Raptors. They switch everything. There aren't really easy matchups to go and poke at because, if you do poke at it, there's swarming help coming from all over the place. They're super eager to help. They're very connected with their help. And they just did not care about the Raptors shooters in this game either. And rightly so. They started Bruno Fernando, not much of a threat. Ochai Agbaji, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Grady Dick, like there's shooting talent there, but it's not all over the place. It's not slapping you in the face. And Barrett and Barnes kind of prove the Thunder right for not worrying about them pulling it from deep by going 3 of 14 combined. Off the bench, really tough stuff 3-point wise. You got a couple of hits from Jamison Battle after that, not a whole lot else. 0 of 5 from Davion Mitchell, 0 of 4 from Jamal Shed, 0 of 4 from Jacoby Walter. The Thunder were right in this game to kind of pack it. And, in those instances where there were, little opportunities to go find a crack in their defense, everything just kind of swarmed. It's like spray foam when you spray it into a crack in your foundation, right? You get in there and all of a sudden the spray foam just kind of envelops everything and there's nowhere to move. And that was basically the vibe for the Raptors on their drives in this game. And without Jakob Poeltl doing the thing where he just kind of creates the little pockets of space, right? He's such a master of creating space despite not being a guy who stretches beyond like 12 feet. He is such a good guy with like the Gortat screens where, in pick and roll, his man will snake and he'll just kind of move a guy out of the way, constantly clearing lanes and space for his drivers to make it work. His screens are just really good as well. And we saw just not having the best screener on this team, what an impact that has for a team that has an offense that is very dependent upon good screens, upon launching guys into space, getting them going downhill with an advantage and figuring things out from there. It was a lot of just like, all right, well, we'll size up the defense. Maybe we'll try to run a pick and roll. Oh, they're switching. Okay, well, we're going to reset it over here, or we're going to try to drive, and all of a sudden the bodies are swarming. I mean, it's just kind of a well-oiled machine defensively for the Thunder, and not having Poeltl just made it that much easier for the machine to operate at full efficiency. Rough game from Scotty Barnes in this one. And look, he took 7 threes of his 13 shots. It's not the balance you necessarily want, but there were just no driving lanes available in this game for Scotty Barnes to go and get where he needs to go. And again, the help is just so liberal with this team. And you can kick it out. And if guys aren't hitting threes, then guys aren't hitting threes. There's not so much you can do about it. Didn't love this Scotty game by any means. There's always that sort of trying to find the mix of aggression and keeping defenses honest with the three. And frankly, I don't think it's a bad idea for him to take a few threes early to kind of soften things up. That's been useful for him in the past. He wasn't able to knock him down. He hit the first shot of the game and it was like, all right, Scotty's letting it rip, and it goes down right out of the gate. And then after that, it just kind of tailed off. It was not the most effective game. And yet he still almost walks into a triple double, 12, 12, and 8 in this one. Some nice sequences of playmaking and kind of carving open that Thunder defense with really nice passing. That's the thing he does well, but not enough of it. And it just felt like every basket the Raptors got in this game was like an achievement. It just felt so hard to get anything going against this Thunder defense. They're just so all over the place. There's this thing they do where, I think we'll talk about Jonathan Mogbo in a little bit, but I think some of the learning he went through in this game was like, you cannot bring the ball down when you are in sort of around the Thunder basket. You got to hold that thing high. You got to go up with it quick, because if you bring it down back to the floor, it's akin to like dipping your hand in some chum, putting it into a piranha tank, and pulling it out with all the flesh gone. It's that sort of quick and swarming and like frenzied when it comes to the Thunder and the way they sort of pounce on that opportunity to just force a turnover. 15 steals in this game for the Thunder, not just 15 turnovers for the Raptors, 15 steals. That's crazy numbers. I mean, they're the number one team at forcing turnovers in the league. They lead the league in steals. The Raptors can certainly learn some stuff from the way the Thunder play defense. It's that kind of nasty on-ball pressure the Raptors are trying to make work on their own end. They just don't have quite the talent or just the discipline and the schooled sort of connectiveness that this Thunder team has on the defensive end. They're really damn good, man. And not having Jakob Poeltl, it just made it all the more difficult. I think, one play really stood out to me early in this game. I think it was maybe, first few minutes. It was very early on. And RJ Barrett, they're trying to do the RJ Barrett thing, right? He's in the corner and he's going to run around a curl. He's going to catch it at the nail, and he's going to go and try to score. Or he's going to have the ball, and he's going to go around the curl, and he's going to try to sort of do the rainbow, getting back into that lane towards the bucket where he's left his man in the dust on the screen. And in this case, Bruno Fernando is not Jakob Poeltl setting that screen upon which RJ Barrett has feasted for his entire time with the Raptors, basically. In this one instance, Bruno Fernando tries to set the screen, totally misses his man, makes no contact, so Barrett has his man on his hip, and then he's driving into all kinds of arms and bodies. He gets it swatted away, and that to me was just like the encapsulation of this offense without Jakob Poeltl. Those little tiny things. We don't think about screening being important, but it's bloody important, and Jakob Poeltl, clearly the best guy on the team at doing it. Without that, the offense was just kind of in mud, and, obviously, the fact that the Thunder put everyone in mud made it that much more difficult. 69.2 half-court offensive rating for the Raptors in this game. 69.2. That's really bad. That is a second percentile offensive rating in the half court for any team in any game this season. Not what you want to be doing. There's a lot of blue on the cleaning the glass page for the Raptors in this one as far as their efficiency numbers go. Just one you want to sort of put in the trash, but also one that you want to maybe not so much look at what you're doing as a team, but look at what the Thunder are doing, right? Like, this is a team you can learn from. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on, coming up in the good, the bad, and the But yeah, a real sort of humbling for the Raptors in this one, to be sure. This is a game where Emmanuel quickly would have been really helpful too, just to have that pull-up threat to at least keep the defense honest and not have them just kind of pack it in, go under everything, switch everything. It's a hell of a team, man. Mark Daigneault, really good coach. Shai is awesome. The Thunder are a hell of a squad, and it bums me out. I'm terrified of them. Like, I would not want to play this team at any time, let alone like a playoff series where things matter. They're damn awesome. We're going to come back on the other side, and we're going to, just put the bad stuff behind us. It's fine. Burn the tape. No big deal. The only tape we're not burning is the tape of Jonathan Mogbo in this game. Some offensive flourishes from Mogbo that you really like to see. We'll get to that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is sponsored by Robinhood Gold, where you don't need to have a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Back at it here on your Friday edition of Locked On Raptors, where it's Toxic Positivity Friday, baby. No, I didn't forget about this staple of the pod. There have been a weird number of Thursday games, and that there have been 2 Thursday games for the Raptors this year, which I feel like they never played on Thursdays last year. And so it's gotten in the way a couple times of full toxic positivity for the length of an entire episode. But we're not going to abandon it entirely because the people love Toxic Positivity Friday, at least the people who tell me about it and say they like it. I'm sure there are people out there who are like, this guy again, being all happy and stuff. Well, screw you. It's Toxic Positivity Friday, baby. Deal with it. It's time to talk about Jonathan Mogbo. Career high, 17 points for him in this game. He doesn't start, which I wanted to see him start. I did not love when Bruno Fernando got the call in place of Jakob Poeltl, but Darko Rajakovic got wise in the second half and put Mogbo in to start the second half. It was kind of over by then anyway, so it didn't really matter, but glad to see that Mogbo got his first half play rewarded with some second half run. And yeah, kind of a weird lack of stuffing the stat sheet for him in this game. Usually he'll go 3 points, 7 boards, 6 assists, like 2 steals, a block. It was kind of a Gary Trent Jr. ass line from him in this game. 17, 1, 1, and 1 and 1 with 6 of 10 from the field, 1 of 1 from downtown as well. But overall, I think a lot of stuff in this game. If you're looking, I feel like we know the rebounding is going to be there for Mogbo. He's a damn good rebounder. There weren't that many defensive rebounds to collect in this game because it felt like the Thunder hit everything. So there's that. And yeah, I mean, I just think the stuff you want to see as far as like the flashes to give you an inkling of what's coming down the line from Mogbo. It's not the rebounding or the defense or the passing. We know that stuff's there. And we know it's there in a pretty impressive fashion for a guy who's only in his first season, is 22, and it's kind of a late bloomer college-wise. The offensive stuff, I mean, we've come a long way from the first couple weeks of the season where he looked like he had an aversion to looking at the rim lest his eyes burn, right? Like it was a thing where he'd catch it 8 feet out. He didn't even look at the rim. He was doing what I'm doing on the screen with the basketball rim behind me and not once looking at it at all. And, just kind of kicking out, doing the thing from there. And hey, we love a dude who passes, especially a dude who does cool passes. That's a Jonathan Mogbo staple, but he's got to find ways to put the ball in the hole as well. And he's a really good interior scorer. This was the whole thing on him in college, was you get him inside 8 feet and he's got a lot of different ways he can burn you. And we saw some of those ways in this game. I think he learned early on, I talked about the piranha analogy earlier. As the game went on, he got a little more eager to just kind of hold the ball high and dunk it instead of bringing it down, resetting, looking for the pass, that type of stuff. Kind of learn from the swarm of Thunder guys who were poking balls free early in this game. And that was nice to see. There was a drive in the first half from the right corner where he got it on the catch, put it on the deck, bumped a dude, scored. I think he got the and one out of it. Like, really encouraging stuff from Mogbo. The flashes he's shown at various times this year of putting it on the deck from the perimeter and getting downhill all the way to the rim in a flash have been really intriguing. He's got to work on the handle. The handle's not quite there. It's very loose. It's very sort of yo-yo-y. It looks like he's like almost kind of always out of control while having control. But if he can kind of refine that a little bit, like his first step is just so explosive. It's hard to stay in front of that dude. And if you're closing out on him at all, like, good night, man. It's done. And hey, he's hit a three in 5 games so far this year. He took 0 threes in his time at college. Just food for thought. I remember a guy, if we're going on the sort of the bent of guys who came out of college a little late, maybe late bloomers, a little unknown coming out of college, who are toolsy playmaking forwards whose style of play is after my very heart. Pascal Siakam shot 1 of 7 from 3 in his first season in the NBA. Jonathan Mogbo, 5 of 16. Just saying. Again, it's Toxic Positivity Friday. We don't got to worry about small samples or once-in-a-generation development arcs like Pascal Siakam had, not ever replicating themselves. No. 5 of 16 versus 1 of 7 in the first quarter of Jonathan Mogbo's first season. You'll take that. It's pretty exciting, man. Like he's a walking It's very, very fun watching Jonathan Mogbo kind of figure this stuff out. He had one play in the second half of this game where he catches it like 12 feet out, and he absolutely cooks Isaiah Hartenstein with like no runway whatsoever. Just kind of has it and goes. Gets by him for a two-handed dunk. And again, that's that sort of quick explosiveness he has. He's flashed at times this year this very tight, in close quarters crossover move he can go to when he's like 8, 10, 12 feet out from the basket. And it's so dynamic and so crossover-y, for lack of a more eloquent description, that he just kind of leaves the dude guessing as to what the hell just happened when he's already at the rim and scoring. Hasn't done it a lot, but those moments where he's done it, it's like, oh, okay, more of that, please. And that dunk going by Hartenstein last night was something else. And yeah, like, there's a lot of stuff going on. There was one possession in the early part of this game guarding Shai, where Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders, maybe the MVP, the best handle in basketball, non-Kyrie Irving division, maybe, guarded by Jonathan Mogbo, and he just kind of like takes his candy like nothing, forces a turnover, they get a bucket the other way. Like, this is not normal stuff we're seeing from Jonathan Mogbo on defense. He does a couple of things every game where it's just like, okay, sure, that's part of the package. All right, great. This is mind-blowing stuff, but and maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic here. Maybe I'm getting too head over my skis, but some of the stuff he does, man, like you see just these little micro skills, the short bursts of blow-by potential in close quarters, the defense stuff, the rebounding where he just like soars in from nowhere and rips a ball away from a guy. You see him do things every game, and there's all these little micro skills in his game that are just like, you don't see them every day. You don't see a lot of guys being able to deploy these types of things. He's a ridiculous athlete, and he's only going to get more sort of wizened as he goes forward here. I love that they're playing him at center. Maybe there's more of a wing potential for him down the line. I just don't see the need to sort of pigeonhole him into any position. He's the kind of guy who seems like he can do a whole lot of things, and I'd like to see him try a whole lot of things early on, whether it's playing on the wing and launching catch and shoots and driving off the catch, or working more as a center. I think he's getting better at screening. I asked him last night after the game. He had the podium game, a podium game and a 37-point loss. Yeah, I don't know if that's a thing to hang your hat on, but it's cool. I asked him sort of like, has he been able to pick up stuff from Jakob Poeltl throughout the season, just kind of learning from him? And yeah, he's like, yeah, the screening, the sort of like just sort of consistency and metronomic consistency he brings to the table. That's all stuff that he's kind of learning from and picking from. And I mean, Jakob Poeltl feels like a pretty good vet to learn from if you're a guy coming in without much in the way of shooting juice. How can you affect the game without having shooting juice? Jakob Poeltl's a good guy to kind of give you that blueprint. And you put Jakob Poeltl into the athletic package of Jonathan Mogbo, and all kinds of really exciting things start to happen. He's got to work on the touch. He's got to work on the handle. He's got to work on the finishing. There's some sort of crazy, wild attempts at finishes that are just going nowhere sometimes, but seems like he's getting a little more refined every single game. And, I'm just fully on the Mogbo train, man. He's super fun. And to me, a good way to sort of be toxically positive here on this Friday after a 37-point loss to the Thunder. It's just, there's something there with that dude. I think he's the most exciting of the Raptors rookies. And that's, there's a lot of exciting Raptors rookies, but none of them are doing the stuff Mobo's doing night in, night out, where it's just like totally popping off the screen. And it's like, that's not normal. That is outlier skill stuff. The threes are falling too, man. Whew. Things get interesting really quick for Mogbo and the Raptors and their build and what it all means going forward. Because, and look, again, 5 of 16, it's nothing. It's a tiny sample. He didn't take any shots in college. The stroke doesn't look necessarily pretty. Can it be functional though? Maybe there's something there. I think our pal S. Barry Henny wrote a piece, just kind of, he was at practice watching Mogbo for like an hour take shots. Like, he's working on it. It's something he is constantly working on. Let your imagination run wild regarding Jonathan Mogbo if he starts cannon threes at a higher rate. It's going to get pretty exciting pretty quickly if this is a thing. But even if it's not, there's so much going on with his game that is really exciting. And, the defensive fit with him and Scotty Barnes, I think there's a chance those two guys, I mean, we've heard so much about like Tari Eason and Amen Thompson with the Rockets, the Terror Twins. Like, start cooking up nicknames for Barnes and Mogbo, because maybe there's like a bookstore thing, Barnes and Mogbo. No, never mind. But we can workshop it. But like, start cooking up your nicknames now, because those two dudes are a hell of a duo to try to score against. The Thunder were fine because the Thunder are ridiculous, and Shai hits every freaking shot. The leaners, the baseline stuff over the backboard, he's ridiculous. But against normal teams that aren't just like giant fire-breathing dragons of basketball, Mogbo and Barnes, there's something else, man. Jonathan Mogbo, your toxic positivity Friday guy, winner, theme, topic, whatever. We're going to come back on the other side. We're going to get into the good, the bad, and the regarding the game against the Thunder. Thing I liked, thing I didn't like, and this got me a little bit intrigued. We'll get to that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where you can get ready to tackle the NFL action with a FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's pretty great. It's pretty simple. Just go make a $5 bet. If you win that bet, $150 in bonus bets to go play around with on the site. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So maybe you're watching a game on a Sunday, you feel like you got a hunch, you want to go throw some money down in the game, you can go and check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same game, where you go place those live in-game bets. Maybe you think your favorite team is going to score a touchdown, or maybe you're a doomer and think they won't score a touchdown and want to win some money off of them being bad. You can go and throw some money down however you like over on FanDuel when you're watching your team this Sunday. Again, just visit FanDuel.com to start today. You'll get started with $150 on bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Wrapping it up here with the good, the bad, and the way we wrap up every single episode of this here podcast on the heels of a Toronto Raptors basketball game, even the bad ones where they lose by 37 at home. Yeah, there's good stuff. I mean, let's get to it. The good for me in this one, the thing I liked, it's a bit of a toxic positivity coated good. Sometimes it's good to get your ass beaten, man. Like, sometimes it's just like, it's humbling. You knock yourself down a little bit. You get to assess where you're at, see the benchmark of what you got to get to. And I think this game last night against the Thunder very much did that. I can imagine maybe the Raptors this week, you beat the Pacers, a team that it feels like they just totally own and have their number. That's great. You beat the Heat, always annoying, always a nice thing to beat the Heat. You've won 4 of 7 since Scotty came back. You've won 5 of your last 8. Things are looking up. The vibes are good. I could see maybe a way in which you're kind of feeling your britches a little bit. It's nice to run into the brick wall that is the Oklahoma City Thunder sometimes to get a bit of a reality check of where you're at, and you can go and reassess from there. I think this is a team that's shown they can handle ugly results, right? They had that nasty start to the season against Cleveland. They bounce right back and win their next game against the Sixers on the Friday with a whole lot of injuries. And then we know what happened. They had the Wolves game that was pretty tight. They nearly take down the Nuggets. Then Scotty gets hurt. And then they start 2-12. A lot of teams start 2-12 and there's no coming back from that. Ask the Washington Wizards how they're doing after starting 2-12. Not so hot. Ask the Sixers. Like, they're just barely trying to scrape out of the hole they're in. The Raptors bounced back from that super well. They've had punchback in a lot of their games, and sort of in the sort of grand scheme of the season. Bad thing happens, good response. Bad thing happens, good response. And I think a game like this against the Thunder, where all of your biggest weaknesses are kind of exposed, your driving is sort of the thing that they're so good at, the thing that they just do better than anyone else. They're not better than anyone else, but as well as anybody when they're at their best, is drive to the bucket and score at the rim through RJ, through Scotty, through Jakob Poeltl and pick and roll stuff. Like, when all that stuff gets exposed and it's not working so hot, and the Thunder have crafted a scheme that's there to neutralize all of that, it's got to be a bit of a humbling thing to go back to the drawing board with and say, all right, how do we fix that? Right. And I think Darko Rajakovic has held the team super accountable this year. Like, he's talked a lot about there being a really high standard, even after their wins. Like, after the Pacers game a couple nights ago, he was like, I expect more from RJ and Scotty. 12 turnovers between the two of them is too much. Like, there still has to be an improvement and a refinement. And I think Darko's got the right kind of handle on this team, the right finger on the pulse, the right culture set up to take a loss like this against the Thunder and turn it into some kind of positive. He even talked about it last night, like talking about learning from what the Thunder do so well on defense, like I talked about earlier, right? Like, this doesn't have to be a game where you throw out all the tape. Watch the tape of what the Thunder did to ruin you. And that can be an informative thing going forward. So yeah, the good thing was getting their ass beaten in a way that maybe is like one of the more effective lessons in the wins and lessons seasons we are currently in the midst of. So yeah, Toxic Positivity Friday leaking into the last segment as well, because of course it is. I'm on brand. Let's go to the bad. Chris Boucher time might need to be over, man. The roller coaster has been fun, but if you've ever ridden the Great Canadian Mindbuster at Canada's Wonderland, eventually you get too old for that. It's too creaky. It's too much. I don't want to ride this thing anymore. That makes me fear for my life. Sometimes it's fun. That climb and the drop, super exciting. Some fun twists and turns along the way. But for the most part, you get off the Mindbuster and the Chris Boucher roller coaster feeling basically the same way, battered, bruised, like you don't really ever want to do it again. Maybe you'll be convinced to do it again sometime in the future, and you'll maybe have fun once out of every 5 times you try it. But the other times, it's really rough. And I just think, since Scotty got back and this team is sort of approaching seriousness, Chris Boucher is kind of an anchor to getting to that place. And it's not like, I love Chris Boucher. Raptor through and through, a champion. This is not anything against what he's done for the team. He's been a really nice guy to have around. But I think as this team is approaching trying to be something a little bit more, just the whack-a-mole nature of his game, it's just having less and less of a place within this team. And games like last night where he comes in and it's just kind of a disaster. He goes 3 of 13. He's not offering anything defensively, too jumpy on defense. Like, this has been his issue all season long, basically his entire career, just being too jumpy on defense. He's shooting just 36% from the field since Scotty got back, 19% from 3. If he's not hitting his threes, it's kind of over. And he's down like high 20s, low 30s from 3. Like, it's just not falling enough for him to really make that much of a tangible impact because the defense is just not there. The offense, sure, sometimes he'll have a nice run on the break or he'll have a nice cut and dunk. But for the most part, it's all stuff that has to be created for him. And it's all stuff that, a lot of guys can kind of fill in that spot and do those things without all the downside that he brings. And why is Chris Boucher's center of gravity like in his Adam's apple? Like, it's the highest center of gravity I've ever seen for a person or a player. It's like he gets knocked over so easily. The finishes are always, they seem way harder than they should be because he's just kind of contorting in air to make it happen. I love Chris Boucher. I appreciate everything he's done for the Raptors, but as they start to get some guys back, if Kelly Olynyk can get back in, if, Bruce Brown can come back and play, I know he brings some size that this team doesn't really have, but I'd much rather play like Bruce Brown at the 4 or more Jonathan Mogbo. Like, play Mogbo 25 minutes. I don't care. Ochai Agbaji can moonlight as a small ball 4. Like, there's ways to get around having to play Chris Boucher within this team. And I just think last night, again, it's the Thunder. He's going to look bad against a team like the Thunder. This is not necessarily a thing against Chris Boucher, but the general sort of uncertain nature of the way he plays. We talked about it a couple weeks ago with our pal Keeks. The most sustainably unsustainable player in basketball is Chris Boucher. And when your team is trying to mold into something that is sort of reliable and dependable, you know what you're getting every night, Chris Boucher kind of has less of a place in that. It bums me out. Like, I love Chris Boucher. He's super fun, but just not working for me all that much lately. And so, yeah, he was the bad from this one for sure. Davion Mitchell was also quite bad. Expected that one. They were going to dare him to shoot, and he missed all 4 of his threes. It's going to happen. 0 points out of Shed and Mitchell. Tough stuff. We'll come back. No, we're not coming back. We're going into the to wrap things up. And I guess my is more of like a big picture thing, because I know there's this sort of like vibe. I've heard this kind of, from Raptors fans, the Locked On Raptors Discord, socials, whatever, talking to people. And, the whole sort of tank or don't tank thing is going to be an annoying through line of this season for sure. I'm of the mind, just like let the team play and see where they're at, and you take it from there. And one way or another, the outcome's good. There's no downside here. But I do think the sort of more tank forward crowd has this sort of vision of, well, you got to do it like OKC did it. You got to do it like the Thunder did it. And the Thunder are awesome. They are enviable. I don't think they're replicable. And that's because, like, this whole era began with a ridiculous windfall from that Clippers trade, where they didn't even really do all that much to make it happen. Kawhi Leonard just kind of held the Clippers over a barrel and said, do this now. And they did it. And like, the Thunder were just the beneficiaries. Whatever team had Paul George was going to be gifted this windfall of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and 10,000 picks. It's not anything the Thunder did, especially, novelly or anything like that, but it's set them up now where they have this infrastructure where they can go Shai, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams is like their 3 dudes for as long as they want. This team is going to be good for a long time. And that's because they just have all this extra pick stuff to kind of keep the cycle flowing of guys who fit in around that big 3. I know there's lots to talk about. Oh, the Thunder are going to be the next team to trade for Giannis or Devin Booker. They're going to go make the star trade. I don't actually think that's what this is leading towards. And maybe I'm wrong, but just reading the tea leaves, as we do in the sometimes, this is a Thunder team that's always been very mindful that they're in Oklahoma City. It's a very difficult thing to go and, bring guys in who don't have a lot of time on their contracts and convince them to stay. Even if you're a contender, like Kevin Durant left, this is not a market that can kind of bank on its ability to keep players in Oklahoma City. So they have to just sort of, I think, do the internal thing. And I wonder if they've learned from the James Harden trade, where they broke up that team early for financial reasons, and it cost them in the end, right? They never won a championship. They probably do win a championship if James Harden's there. James Harden's there for a couple more years or whatever. 3 MVPs on one team. Sam Presti knocked that one out of the park. I think maybe the model that for the Thunder here is just use your ridiculous cache of picks, which is like more picks than anyone has any right to have or can do anything with, except trade them for stuff. And these sort of little upgrades. Okay, let's go get Alex Caruso for a first, or actually not even for a first, for Josh Giddey. Unbelievable they didn't trade a first for Alex Caruso. But like, they can do stuff like that where it's like, oh, Dennis Schroeder, he'd be a nice guard for us. Let's go throw a pick at the Nets to get him. And we still have 1,000 picks over here that we can keep on using. I think that's going to be the model here for the Thunder. And I know Raptors fans would love to be the Thunder. No one is going to be the Thunder. They're probably going to be the most dynastic team of the next 10 years. And it pains me to say, as someone who hates the way that they, shut down Shai for a couple of years in a row, hates that they just blew up that super fun Chris Paul team that they didn't really have to do. They already had Shai in house. They already had all the picks. They did not need to go trade Chris Paul, but they did. And then they tanked for a couple of years and they were miserable, but now they're awesome and they're set up really well. It bums me out because I don't think Sam Presti deserves nice things, because he does cowardly things all the time. But it's undeniable now. They are just set up for sustainability and long-term dominance. And as much as it'd be great if the Raptors could go and replicate that, getting another high pick in this year's draft is not going to be the thing that helps you do that. There's other ways to go and build. I talked yesterday about how they're actually kind of forming into a team that's in really great shape to make a consolidation trade at some point. The Raptors are like, that's maybe the path here. And if they're bad this year, they get another high pick. That's great, but they're not going to be the Thunder, because the Thunder are in this sort of unprecedented sort of situation where they got this windfall for nothing, or for Paul George, but like, they got this windfall that was not supposed to come to them. And they've done everything they can to maximize that. Great for them. And, the Raptors, as much as you might want to be say like, oh, the Thunder of the model, you got to go be the Thunder. That's not going to be your pathway forward here because it's just not attainable. It's not replicable, which is fine. There are other ways to do things. And the Raptors, I think, are on the right track of doing that, whether it's being bad this year and getting a high pick and bolstering what they've got, or being good this year or better than we thought and using their newly found awesome depth and lots of young players to go make a consolidation trade. There's a pathway here, just not one to be as good as the Thunder. And that's life. That's pro sports, baby. You're not always going to be the best, but they can still be very good. We'll see. Either way, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out, rocking with the show all week, rocking with the newsletter. Of course, subscribe for free to the newsletter. Link in the description of the podcast. Much appreciated when you go and do that. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, just click through the QR code on the screen. You can subscribe there as well. Man, losing my voice at the end of the week. Seems like a great time to take the weekend off. We'll be back again Monday. We'll talk about the game against the Mavericks on Saturday. Look ahead to the game against the Knicks on Monday night as well. And in the meantime, thanks so much for hanging out. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. 2 in a row.